Did Ford lose 10 horsepower with the 2022 V8s? That's something that's been in the back of my mind since they made the announcement that they had. They had stated they had to do this to meet emissions controls. And I speculated at the time that it was probably done through the ECU as there were no hardware changes announced. The engine looked to be the same V8 Coyote that we had got to know and love. Others speculated that perhaps this was something that was done to appease insurance regulators or appease emission control regulators, that actually the Ford hadn't lost 10 horsepower. In this episode of Tony's Fords and Mustangs, come along with me as I try to figure out exactly what's going on here. I can tell you it's not going to be a short journey. It's going to take some time. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. I've done a lot of phone calls, done a lot of research, and some of it's just kind of led me in circles. But like they used to say back in the X-Files, the truth is out there, and I intend to find it. I also want my 10 horses back, and maybe a few more just for good measure. When Ford announced that all Ford V8s, excluding the GT500, and don't ask why that car was excluded, would see a decrease in 10 horsepower and 10 torque in 2022, it was big news. Every automotive outlet covered it, as well as a few mainstream outlets. Road and Track managed to get a Ford representative to state that the Low Emission Vehicle LEV 3 program, adopted by the California Air Resources Board, which is abbreviated CARB, was the reason behind this change. And I'm going to quote here, "Changes were made to meet a more stringent LEV 3 regulatory emissions requirements that resulted in horsepower and torque reduction for the 5.0 liter. This according to Ford spokesperson Claire Carroll, who according to her LinkedIn page is the Mustang Communications Manager at Ford Motor Company. In short, we can point to California's regulations for these changes. I understand the state leads the nation in cleaner air legislation. If not for California, we might all still be using toxic lead as a valve lubricant. I just selfishly wish they waited one more year." According to Ford, those changes were brought about by modifying the 5 liters hydrocarbon traps, moving the mass airflow sensor to a new location, and updating engine calibration. I can confirm that indeed the location of the mass airflow sensor has been changed. It was moved from the front of the intake to the rear and a bit further away from the filter. As to the hydrocarbon trap, well, I can't see where there are any changes, but perhaps it's an internal change. I'm not really sure on that. What I am sure of is that neither of these items should have resulted in a loss of 10 horsepower. And most, if not all, of this loss came about due to the calibration change. So there's the information from Ford. And it would make sense that if we could find a tuner, we'd be able to undo some of those calibration changes and pick some of that horsepower back up, and additionally gain a little bit more just through a straight tune. So I reached out to some friends at Steeda. Unfortunately, Steeda has yet to have a tune for the 2022. They did have one for 2021. It's still there. They saw gains in horsepower of 14 and gains of torque of 5. My thinking at the time was undo some of those calibration changes that Ford did to the 2022. I'd have a little bit of a gain there, and that would be on top of the gains that we would see from a tune. Now, Steeda works with SCT. SCT is yet to come out with a tune for 2022, so that was a dead end. I then reached out to a local tuner who works with HP tuners. HP tuners as well has yet to come out with a tune for a 2022. And now this is where things get a little bit interesting. I reached out to Diablo Sports, which is owned by Holley. They say their tuner can get the job done on a 2022. They stated their 93 octane tune can see gains of 20 horsepower and 38 foot-pounds of torque, and their 91 octane tune makes an additional 15 horsepower and 30 foot-pounds of torque. And this is on a 2022 GT or Mach 1. The confusing thing here is that they stated in an email, and I quote, "Nothing changed in the calibration for the supposed 10 horsepower loss." Now that directly contradicts what's coming out of Ford. And that leaves us to question as to why Ford would say they recalibrated the ECU if indeed they did not. I'm not sure I'm buying this bit of information. I do think changes were made by Ford to meet carbon emission standards. California is a huge market for Ford and not one they could simply write off, especially if it only costs 10 horsepower to meet the regulation. To go back to making a California-specific model wouldn't make sense from a logistical or cost factor. Once again, we're talking about 10 horsepower. It's not something that your typical user is going to notice. As for Diablo Sport, I'm not sure. We may be looking at their 5.0 liter 2021 tune being sold as a 2022 tune. They say they've tested it. I'm not sure if they've updated it at all. They say there wouldn't be any increase because of the recalibration. This is all a guess on my part. I think it's a pretty good guess. If you believe what Holley Diablo Sports rep told me, the gains from their tune would be no different than those seen in a 2021, just 10 less. and that the power loss could be attributed to a move of the mass airflow sensor and a change to the hydrocarbon trap. Additionally, they stated there was no recalibration done by Ford. While that's possible, some new information tells me that's just inaccurate. And here's why. This is your mass airflow sensor. It needed to be moved because the hydrocarbon trap is located here. It's between the mass airflow sensor on the straight section of pipe. This is much more extensive than the 2021 version and would lead to a little bit less airflow, which led to the need to recalibrate the ECU from Ford. That's what I believe to be accurate and where the 10 horsepower went. I made a video in the past saying that a cold air intake was a waste of money, but if you eliminate the hydrocarbon trap, this section here, and get a tune, or some would call it a recalibration, you could pick up the 10 horsepower plus a bit more. Now, once again, this is speculation. I hope this video has been informative. If you'd like to see the first 5 modifications I did to my 2022 Mach 1 after owning a 2021, check out this video over here. Also, stay tuned. I have a dyno run planned for next week. I'm going to run a baseline there to see kind of where we're starting at. I'm going to do one in normal, one in sport, and then one in track mode, just to see if the modes have any difference in horsepower output. Okay, thanks for watching. Until next time, we'll see you.